Welcome back to Green Connections. We help you live green, work green, and earn green. I'm Joan Michaelson. Like us on Facebook and follow me on Twitter at Joan Michaelson. Listen to us on Talkers Radio Network and at greenconnectionsradio.com. Send me your comments and suggestions for stories and people that we should have conversations with at info@greenconnectionsradio.com. I had the extreme privilege this week of meeting Amory Lovins, who is a legend in the energy business. Amory Lovins is the co-founder and chief scientist of the Rocky Mountain Institute, a prolific author, a prolific inventor, a prolific TED Talk speaker, and truly an innovator in the energy and sustainability space. He is one of those people who is literally putting his money and his time and his resources where his mouth is, innovating the energy business. He has spent 40 years in the energy business. Amory wrote a book called Reinventing Fire, Business Solutions for the Energy Era, which he and I spoke about, and definitely belongs on the shelf and the reading table of anybody interested in innovation in the energy industry. Let's listen to my conversation with Amory Lovins.
60 colleagues and I put out a book a couple of years ago called Reinventing Fire, Bold Business Solutions for the New Energy Era, that addresses that question, at least with regard to energy and everything connected to energy, and that's a pretty good master key for the whole range of sustainability issues. And we found that the United States, for example, could run a 2.5-fold bigger economy in 2050 with no oil, no coal, no nuclear energy, a third less natural gas, $5 trillion cheaper than business as usual, counting all hidden or external costs at zero, needing no new inventions and no acts of Congress, the transition led by business for profit. Now, to get there, we integrated all 4 sectors that use energy that are normally considered separately, namely transportation, buildings, industry, and electricity. We found, for example, it's a lot easier to solve the car and electricity problems together than separately. We also integrated 4 kinds of innovation. Normally people count just 2, namely technology and public policy, but there are 2 even more powerful ones normally left out, namely design, the way we combine technologies, and strategy, new business models, new competitive strategies. And when you play with the full deck with all 4 kinds of innovation, you get some really disruptive business opportunities, and you get a lot more than the sum of the parts.
How do we get to this energy picture that you just described? What has to happen in the energy sector to get there?
Well, the incumbents have to realize that their business models won't work anymore under the onslaught of the insurgents and decide how they're going to use their assets and skills and capabilities to thrive in the new world, or they may simply decide to go away.
How do insurgents and the establishment, especially in industries like the utility business, which is so entrenched and so locked in a very difficult situation right now, too, where they have to reinvent their business model and reinvent how they make money and make more by selling less and et cetera, all without dropping a moment of service to anyone. So, I mean, this is the thing that fascinates me, is we have to reinvent the way we get our power without ever losing any power. A restaurant can shut down for renovation, okay? We can't do that with the grid. We can't do that with the utility business.
It's certainly a very interesting set of conversations, and it's time now that we did this also in the oil industry, which is kind of like airlines. It's a great industry and a bad business. I've been working in it for about 40 years, and I'm actually a member of the National Petroleum Council. Although probably the only one driving an electric car whose license plate says off oil. and you know, why do I say it's a bad business? You may think it's immensely powerful and profitable. Well, in good years, yes. In bad years, no. And it has some really discouraging fundamentals. It's very capital intensive, very long lead time, very high geological and technological and political risks.
Well, yes, exactly. The danger and the national security issues are huge. Where do you come down on fracking and natural gas? You mentioned using a third less natural gas as your picture of where we can be by 2050. How do we get there, and where do you come down on fracking? I mean, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in your meetings at the American Petroleum Institute.
Well, that was actually quite a pleasant meeting. But I think a lot of people are starting to realize and to agree privately with this view of the world that fracking for natural gas alone is not economic at anything like today's prices. That is, the so-called dry gas by itself costs too much. And therefore, essentially all the drilling and activity are being driven by gas that has a bunch of oil in it that's worth 4 times more than the gas. Meanwhile, gas prices are volatile, and the cheaper the gas is at the wellhead, actually, the more volatile the price downstream to the customer becomes. Now, volatile prices impose risk, just as, why is an adjustable rate mortgage looks cheaper than a fixed-rate mortgage, but why do many people choose a fixed-rate mortgage at a higher price? Because you don't want the risk of losing your house if interest rates spike.
We can't do all this without a workforce. And so where are we going to get the workforce of the future to support these new industries that both in the new energy economy and in the sustainability field?
There's a wide range of national, state, and local programs, some of them based at community colleges and vo-techs, to retrain people or to train them from scratch. And in fact, America now has, for example, more solar jobs than we have coal or steel jobs.
Really?
Yeah. And in Europe, there's already well over 1 million new clean energy jobs. This has happened with remarkable speed, and it's starting to happen a lot faster, although gradually we're actually getting more efficient in like how we install solar panels on your roof, so we don't need as many people as we are adding solar panels. But it's a very promising line of work, and the same for the wind industry, and they have created a lot of jobs in almost every congressional district, including, obviously, a great many Republican ones.
And I lived in North Dakota for a couple of years, and as Byron Dorgan is fond of saying, they're born leaning because there's so much wind there. I was levitated. Innovation is happening in the private sector and in many of the areas you described, but where it's not happening is on the regulatory side, and there's limited innovation on the financial side, financial modeling. Obviously, businesses need the regulatory environment to get it together and get more creative and reconfigure some of these regulations, tighten some, restructure others. And the financial models need to be put in place. I mean, I've gotten to know Jigger Shaw, for example, who reinvented some of the financing models for solar. So where is that innovation going to come from? How is that going to happen?
Well, actually, there is a lot of both regulatory and financing innovation, and it's kind of oozing up through the cracks all over in the financial community and among entrepreneurs and occasionally governments. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has been doing a terrific job of competition and transparent pricing, so that now in over 30 states, ways to save electricity or use it at better times can compete directly against supply. We have decoupled at a state level utilities' revenues and profits from their energy sales, so we're starting to reward them for cutting your bill, not for selling more energy. And the other 35 or so states need to do that too. So I think innovation of many kinds is needed. It's not all about technology. And fortunately, we're starting to see those moving parts come together in ways that I think will transform the energy system beyond recognition in the next decade.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I only hope that the entrenched interests don't derail them before we can give them a chance to take flight. So thank you so much for all you've done for energy and sustainability over the last many decades and your books. We'll have a link to their website and to his books on greenconnectionsradio.com. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Joan Michaelson from Green Connections. Thanks. Amory is extraordinary, isn't he? He's just incredible. I mean, I want to hear what you thought, what came to your mind as you were listening to him. My quote of the week has to be from Amory when he said, "America has more solar jobs now than coal or steel jobs." Think about that for a moment. America has more solar jobs now than steel or coal jobs. That's amazing. I mean, that is a sign of the times. And his discussion about utilities, reinventing utilities, they are in very much a difficult position. They can't shut down like a restaurant can to renovate. And his comments actually made me feel a lot better about the utility sector, looking for solutions and figuring out ways to make more money selling less of their product. It's quite remarkable. One of the key things, though, that really stuck with me, there were three things that really stuck with me about my conversation with him. One was 4 kinds of innovation, that you need to have design and business models integrated into the process, as well as technology and policy. Design and business models are coming up more and more as necessary parts of an integrated process of innovation, that it can't just be a technology and then we find a policy that enables it or something. You have to have all of these integrated at the same time. The second thing that really struck me that I want to point out now is insurgents driving the established players to innovate. You know, entrepreneurs and innovators who are nipping at the heels and trying things differently. You know, you think you're not being heard and you think you're not making a difference, when in fact the insurgents are driving the established players to make changes for the betterment of all, for the resource conservation. And last, but certainly not least, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in a meeting with Amory Lovins and the National Petroleum Council. Wouldn't that be amazing? I applaud them. I applaud the National Petroleum Council for including Amory in their discussions. That makes me feel like they are taking environmental concerns and the promise of renewable energies much more seriously than I feared they might be, to including someone of Amory's stature and Amory's depth and Amory's values in their discussions. Makes me feel a lot better about the future of the energy business. Stay tuned, because coming up next, we're going to take a complete right turn. Do you have kids? Think about raising a zero-carbon footprint baby. Think about that for a moment. Raising a child is very resource-intensive. We're going to talk to a woman who is raising a zero-carbon footprint baby and find out how she's done it. Wait till you hear her strategies. Talk to you in a moment.
Capital Audio Post, your one-stop shop for your post-production needs. 703-712-8757.
Our services include video editing, sound design, sound mixing, ISDN recording, and many other media-related services.
Let us finish your project no matter where you are, across the U.S. or across the world. Go to www.capitalaudiopost.com. Call us at 703-712-8757.
Let us know how we can help you finish your production.